Jerry Hofling Jr., Director of Technical Services for the PCS, and I would like to welcome you all to our workshop. Today, I'm planning on covering some common shop tips that most club makers use in their shops, such as pulling the new Titleist 905, the Cleveland Highbore XL, discussing pulling a King Cobra composite titanium head. From there, we will look into common ferrule mishaps, such as gaps in the ferrule, and how we would go about fixing those so you wouldn't have to take the club apart. And to wrap things up, we will discuss using video for launch monitor fittings, and as well as finding release point in the player swing. And here we are with the Titleist 905. As you can see, it has an aluminum hosel that actually goes into the head where it is actually epoxied into the head. This is not a one piece like the old Titleist 975s and the 983s used to be. So first what we do is we have to take off the ferrule. What I like to do is by using a little butane torch, I just heat it up, run it around a little bit, and by using a knife always go up the back side. Well, let me give it a little more heat. Then you just move it in there like so. Comes off. There we go. Next, what you're going to want to do is apply heat by running it along the back side of the head here. And I usually go to a count of 5. And then I will focus heat here and keep it kind of up here in the hosel. Now there's two ways you can go about doing this. Some people actually heat them first by giving it the heat here and then putting it into the extractor. You can also put the club directly into the extractor and heat it as well. It's just some have said that the aluminum here that we have on the extractor takes away, it takes the heat source, away from the club. So I will start off by just heating it a little bit here before we put it into the extractor. And I usually count to 5 when I'm doing this. We'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can also use a heat gun if you would like, just because I use a butane because that's all I've really ever dealt with and that's where I feel most comfortable. So now I'll show you how you just focus on, keep the heat around. You want to keep the heat away from the paint because you don't want to burn the customer's club. I'll also run it along the face as well. Get some up along the hosel. Run it on there again. And I see with the piece starting to come here, it's showing you that the head has acquired a good temperature, so I'm going to now put it in the extractor and we'll remove the head. And here we are now with the club in the extractor. I'm just going to give it just a little bit more heat because we heated it again there for about 15-20 seconds before. Now I'll do it for about, again, 5. Come down here, hit it on the face just a little bit. Not really focusing my heat in one spot for too long. And now we will see if she's ready to go. By using a hydraulic extractor, you have a little bit more power. And there we go, the head has started to come loose. If you can see there, it's popped. Whoops. And starting to come off. Go. And then you just keep pumping. And you see the hydraulic pushes it off. And we give it just a slight. Be gentle when you twist so you don't damage the shaft. As we can see here, the shaft has not been compromised. As long as you don't twist it too hard, it won't happen. We have the head intact, no burning, no discoloration. From there, you want to make sure that you take your drill with a little wire brush Same thing, I like to run it through the bottom side as well. And there you go. A nice pulled Titleist 905. Now after showing you how to pull the 905, the next club I'd like to show how to take apart is the new Cleveland Highbore XL. Now this is a little bit different from the original Highbore because the original Highbore finish had that grain finish kind of like a Titleist did on the bottom. Well, if you see here, it's more of a black, kind of shiny, it's got some tints of blue in there. So you definitely want to be careful because this would be the club that you could probably damage real easy for your customer, and it's going to, it'll be noticeable where maybe other things you can kind of cover up sometimes. So I will show you how I go about doing this. As you can see, I've already removed the ferrule, and I usually like to put the club in the extractor right off the get-go. Sometimes, again, how we did the 905, we heated it with our hand and then put it in the extractor. Some people just go right here from the get-go. So basically, again, I use a butane torch, and I will count to about 5, remove it, then I work the face of the club, give it a second to kind of cool off. Every once in a while I'll just give it a little touch just to see how it's doing. Run it with a little bit more heat. Again, then I will go back to heating the face. Give it a little touch there, feels pretty warm. We've heated it for about, I'd say a total of 15 seconds. The nice thing with these hydraulic extractors, I'd be willing to assume that the club is ready to go. So we'll give it a couple of cranks here, and as you see, it is coming off successfully. There's no shaft has not been compromised in any way. And if we look here, there is no discoloration to the head, keeping it the same finish of where it was. No discoloration to the face. The brand new Highbore XL pulled safely, and your customer will be happy. The third and final driver that we have here is a Cobra 454 comp. A lot of the heads nowadays, such as Callaway, actually Founders Club has produced again. They have a composite tie head, and as well as the Cobra. A lot of people tend to get nervous because you see here the graphite composite crown coming apart. Well, that can be, you want to be careful when you're heating the head, because if it gets too much, the graphite will actually start to come apart and the head will just be compromised, and it won't be playable. So what I would do is, unfortunately I'm not going to pull this head, but just kind of show you how I would go about doing it. If I was to have the torch going, I would run it with some heat for a few seconds. You keep it along the bottom, run it for about 5 seconds. I pull away, then I'll go down to the bottom portion of the face, because you want to stay away from up here. So I'll give it some heat here. Then I will focus my heat along the bottom for a little bit. Come back, and then I'll run it again just for a few seconds here. And I kind of just keep repeating the process. You continue to do this, you can do it for, I would say, 15 to 30 seconds, not focusing on the same heat in one spot for too long. And you put it in your extractor and the head will come apart. And one other final tip you'd like to remember is, as I'm heating it, when I have it in the extractor, don't be afraid to touch the top of the head when you're heating it around here, because you want to make sure that this isn't getting hot, because if it is, then the graphite is going to start to get hot and you do not want the fibers coming apart. And that is basically the tip for taking apart a composite head. The next shop tip that I'm going to cover for you is common mishaps that can happen with ferrules after the club has been assembled. There's two main mishaps that can happen with golf clubs with ferrules, and it happens, I'm sure it happens to the best of us. The first, well, both of them entail having a little bit of a gap between the ferrule and the hosel. Now there's two different methods you can go about doing it. If the ferrule hasn't been turned, I will show you how you can go about by having a little bit more plastic and how you would go about covering this up. The second obstacle that you can run into is maybe after you have turned the ferrule already, that you'll still have a gap there. Well, there's another way that I will be able to show you here how you can also overcome that obstacle as well. The first trick that I'm going to show you here is when you actually, if you have not turned the ferrule yet and you notice that there is a little gap, but you still have a decent amount of excess plastic for the ferrule, I will show you how you can go about to cover that up. What you do is you just need a little rod. You could even use like an old screwdriver, just something that can retain heat. Next, I'll use just a can of propane with the torch on it. And basically, you don't need it bright pink, but you want to make sure that you have enough heat on there so you can work with the plastic.